Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a weekly podcast bringing readers and writers of Australian fiction together. I'm Claudine Tonellis. As an avid reader and passionate advocate for Australian fiction, I have made it my mission to spotlight local talent. So if you're looking for your next read or simply want to learn more about the Australian literary scene, this podcast is for you. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and relax. This episode is brought to you by HarperCollins Australia. Listeners, I'm thrilled to be chatting with exciting debut author Brooke Crawford today. Brooke's terrific novel, Better Than the Real Thing, is published by HQ Fiction at the end of this month, November 2025, and I can't recommend this novel highly enough. Described as Notting Hill meets Bridget Jones Baby, it's smart, pacey, funny, drama-filled, and utterly romantic. The perfect summer read, and one I suspect will be filling Christmas stockings around the country before too long. So without further ado, let me say congratulations, Brooke, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Claudine, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. That was beautiful.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Brooke, I wondered if we could start by you telling me how long you'd been working on this manuscript, and when did you first think, I might have something here?
That's a really great question, Claudine. I worked on it over a period of years, really. I started it in 2021 and wrote about 15,000 words. And then my copywriting business got very busy and I was homeschooling my eldest child. So I had to park it for a while. I came back to it in 2023 because the story just never left me alone in that period of time that I wasn't working on it. And so I wrote the bulk of it in 2024, which was a very big year for me.
So talking about 2024 being a big year, what was the first break, if I can say it that way, in relation to this book? So you've written it, it was a story that didn't let you go, but when did you think this might actually get published? What actually happened?
I think the first moment of that was when I was announced as a finalist for the Romance Writers of Australia's Opal Award. That was a really big moment for me because at that stage, nobody else had seen any of it. I sort of had a feeling that it could be something because it was just so joyful to write and the characters felt so rich and real to me. But sometimes you just need that external validation to really believe that what you're working on is worthy of your time and energy. So being a finalist for that was really special. Of course, then going on to win that award later that year was a huge moment. But it also won the Editor's Choice Award in the Romance Writers of New Zealand's Great Beginnings competition, and also came third in the League of Romance Writers Emily Award, which is a US-based award. So all of those things kind of combined to really fuel me and give me the encouragement that I needed. Because, you know, when you're writing something that you really are just on your own with it, it's hard to know whether it's just you that thinks it's kind of got legs or whether other people will enjoy it too. So those three things were really instrumental, I think, in making me feel as though I could possibly move towards publication.
Yeah, I think it cannot be understated how important validating and encouraging entering those competitions can be. They can be disheartening if you don't get anywhere, but when you do get somewhere and somebody says to you, I think this is something, I think this could be something great, it really does help you along that journey, doesn't it?
I'm a huge advocate for entering awards. And even if you don't place, a lot of competitions offer feedback from the judges. And those comments from impartial readers who are, you know, very well versed in your genre and just fiction writing in general, it's so important for helping you develop the manuscript. So even if you're not placing, you're still winning really because you're getting feedback that's helping you to develop your work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, as mentioned in my intro, this book has been aptly described by reference to two wonderful all-time favourite rom-coms, almost guaranteeing your book's universal appeal. It's set between Melbourne and London, and it's the story of two people, Netta and Mo, who it seems are fated to meet under rather extraordinary circumstances. So I wondered if you could tell me, where did the inspiration for the story come from?
Claudine, I've always been really, even as a child, very fascinated by the concept of something being lost and then found by somebody who may not have been meant to find it. And so the character of Mo actually came to me first, and then Netta. So once I had these two characters, I knew that I wanted it to be a lost thing that connected them. And the diary was what I landed on because I wanted it to be something that would feel exposing for Mo, being somebody who's so public. So it had to be something very private. And a diary, obviously, there's nothing more private than that. So that's really where the seed of the story came from. And then it just kind of rolled on from there. It's evolved a lot from the first draft. There's been lots of changes and additions and omissions. But yeah, I think the initial seed came from that fascination with discovering something lost. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So when we meet them both, Netta and Mo are on opposite sides of the planet. Netta is a primary school teacher in Melbourne who is facing a bit of a personal crisis, shall we say, and Mo is a celebrity musician living in London who's facing more of a professional crisis.
Yeah.
So how do these two people living such different lives on opposite sides of the planet, how do they find each other?
Right. So Netta is a teacher in Melbourne and she's 39. And as you said, she's at a bit of a crossroads with her life and how things are going for her. One day she finds a loose floorboard in her house. And when she opens it up, there's an old journal sitting there on the joist. So she pulls it out and quickly realizes that it is the childhood diary of Morrison Maplestone, who's now a very famous, world famous musician who lives in London. And when he discovers that she has it, he's very, very keen to get it back because it contains information that he does not want to be made public. And so he offers to pay her to deliver it to him personally in London. And then obviously these two very unlikely people meet each other and find that perhaps they're not so different to each other after all.
The story is a dual point of view story. It's told mostly in alternating chapters by Netta and Mo. I personally love dual point of view stories. And as a writer, I understand it can offer many advantages over a single point of view. Because in this case, we actually get two main characters rather than just one.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, Brooke, was this something that you considered as you wrote the story, or did it just come naturally for you to write in this way?
It came really naturally. And I think the reason for that was that Mo always had a very strong voice for me when I was thinking about him. And also, it just worked because I didn't want Mo to come across as being a really stereotypical rock star. So I wanted to peel that cover back straight away for the reader and let them see who he really was. And the best way to do that was to give him a voice in the story. And also, it was really fun to write. I kind of went into it thinking, can I write a male perspective? But because he was so clear to me, I think he came off, genuine. And lots of people have said to me that the distinction between the two characters feels quite clear in the voice. So, yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, Netta and Mo are polar opposites in many ways. Netta lives in suburban Melbourne and working as a school teacher, and she's desperate for her own family, but her biological clock is ticking. While Mo is a celebrity musician living in London whose reputation as a model seducing bad boy needs urgent rehabilitation. I don't think you could have thought up two more different characters. So tell me where they came from, Brooke.
It's funny, Mo arrived almost fully formed. I know that's probably a pretty boring answer, but one day he was just there and I remember racing to the keyboard and just writing down his backstory. I could see what he looked like. I could hear his voice. He was just really there. I kind of knew a lot about him right from the start. Netta was a bit slower to come together. And I think it was because maybe I was afraid of just writing myself. Netta's not me, but there are elements of me in her. I used to be a teacher. I used to live in St Kilda like she does. So I took my time with Netta because I felt it was really important for her to come across as being very relatable and likable, but not so perfect that she didn't feel real. So I took my time with her. But yeah, I think that those two characters, they complement each other really well. Despite their differences, I feel like they sort of fit together quite well once they start being honest with each other.
We can't talk about this book, Brooke, without talking about the cast of wonderful supporting characters whom you've created. Of note in particular are Freya, who is Etta's best friend and a mother of three, who kind of lives vicariously through Etta in her adventures throughout the book. And then, of course, we have this like larger than life agent extraordinaire, Rona, who seems to manage to keep Mo grounded despite his obviously stratospheric fame. I think these characters give us a more rounded perspective on these main characters. So tell me about them and how did you flesh them out and how did you give them a purpose in this novel?
Yeah. So Freya was super fun to write because she's sort of a very frank, funny, but very caring and empathetic person. I am a mother of three, so I was able to write Freya from the experience of juggling three young children. But I also have been very lucky in my life to have long-term friendships with people who can be very honest with me and who I can be very honest with. And so writing that friendship felt very natural, and writing their dialogue with each other felt really natural too, because they're the sorts of discussions that I have with my own girlfriends. Rona, I wanted her to be someone to Mo that loved him on a level beyond the professional relationship that they have. So I gave them a very long relationship. They've known each other since Mo was 23. And she is, again, somebody who is kind of a voice of reason for Mo, but her blunt sort of honesty comes from a place of really deep love for him. And he's very much a part of her family as well as being a client. So I think the purpose of Rona really is, I think initially it was just to sort of show Mo from another perspective, but she really became something much bigger than that as I was writing her. And I can't tell you how much fun I had writing her. She's such a character in the, in the other sense of the word. She's got a lot to offer, Rona. I think she almost needs her own story.
I agree. She really does. She seems to be a fascinating character who, as you say, sort of took Mo under her wing and really sort of made him part of her family. She was very insightful about many things in Mo's life and was kind of instrumental in letting things happen the way that they did throughout the novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like she operates with Mo's best interests at heart the whole time, and she challenges him and supports him. So it's a fine balance, because obviously they do have a business relationship and she is there to sort of further his career, but she also has this really deeply vested interest in his emotional well-being. So she has to tread that line as well during the story.
Now, despite the romantic nature of the book, it doesn't shy away from dealing with some fairly difficult issues like declining fertility, pregnancy loss, and addiction. As a writer, Brooke, how do you go about balancing out dealing with these sort of serious real life issues with the inherent hopefulness of a romance?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for me, it wasn't really a conscious decision to include those things. It just felt like the right thing to do, because I think any real life romance exists and flourishes and succeeds amongst real life things like that. We don't exist in a vacuum where nothing bad has ever happened to us, especially if we're meeting people in our late 30s and into our 40s. We've all got a bit of, life under our belts by then. So I think really it was just about being very honest about those things and allowing the characters to sit in them and be affected by them, but also still have the lightness there that balances it, just like it does in real life. I mean, something bad can be happening to us, but someone's still going to say something funny at some point, or we're still going to eat something that we really enjoy, or whatever. There's always a bit of balance. So finding that, it took a bit of work to get it right, but I'm really glad that I was encouraged by my publisher to really lean into those things, because I think it's important. It puts a bit more meat on the bones of the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely does. Also, one of the issues that Mo has to contend with, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is this sort of bad boy reputation. And the paparazzi don't make his life easy. And obviously, we've had so very many notorious examples over the years of the paparazzi invading celebrities' privacy, particularly, I would say, coming out of the UK. So I wondered, was this something you were especially concerned to address in this novel, and in particular, this notion that what plays out in the media is often far from the truth, but for celebrities, optics are everything?
I think fame gave me a really good lens to kind of look at privacy in general through. I think we live in a really interesting time when it comes to privacy, and even regular people, we're kind of foregoing our privacy a lot when it comes to things like social media. So making comments about privacy via the lens of fame, it kind of just exacerbates everything, just makes everything a bit bigger and easier to sort of illustrate, I suppose. But yeah, I think that culture of deciding who and what someone is based purely on what we can see or what we're told is something that we really need to challenge, particularly now when we can't even trust the accuracy or the source of a lot of the information that we see online. And that's something that I hope people think about when they read the book. It's not what the book is about per se, but I think there is that message in there that maybe we need to do a little bit more work and scrape the top layer back before we can decide if something's true or not.
Yeah, I think something that was particularly glaring for me in this story was the scene where Mo is on the tube and he gets recognised. And I just think, wow, I mean, what happened after that was just insane. But I'm guessing this is not an unusual thing for celebrities to have to face.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of really romanticize celebrity a little bit, but when you really think about it, I wouldn't want to be a celebrity. I wouldn't want people to know who I am when I'm doing my groceries in my tracksuit pants. I just want to be able to get on with my life. So I think there is a balance there, and I think there's a part in the book where Mo says something along the lines of, "When your money comes from fame, there's a price," and it is that sacrifice of privacy and anonymity that he has to live with, whether he likes it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things that I found especially impressive in this story, Brooke, was that your characters had a great deal of integrity. And I suspect this is probably one of your character traits, which you've given to both Netta and Mo. And it was refreshing to see characters who were not only honest, but transparent, even though they were obviously dealing with some difficult personal issues. Was this important to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think in any romance, we as writers have a responsibility to show characters who are good people. They don't have to be perfect.
Mm.
And I think that was what I wanted to show with Netta and Mo, that people who are very imperfect and flawed can still be really decent people. And it's just little things like, you know, holding a door open for somebody, or, Mo sweeping up the toast crumbs that his brother's left behind. Just those little things, I think, help show that people, even though they might seem a certain way, can still be really decent on the inside. And that is something that I did want to show. Integrity, I think, is particularly with Netta, I wanted to show her as being somebody who had possibly operated with a little too much integrity up until this point and had maybe left herself second. And coming into her 40s, I wanted her to say, no, well, maybe it's time for me to really go for what I want to, and finding a way to still be that really good person, but still ask for and pursue what she wants. I think that's a point all of us come to at some point. And for me, it was when I entered my 40s. It was, okay, well, now I need to go for what I want to do. I hope I've achieved that with both of them.
I think you absolutely have, because without giving too much of the story away, I mean, there were moments when Netta could have, used what happened to her advantage.
That was always going to be the decision because that's just who I knew she was. But I think it also helps the readers like her. Like we want to read about someone who's going to do the right thing in that circumstance. And, Mo's done some pretty bad stuff. His reputation is probably fairly well earned. We don't see a lot of that in the book, but I think that part of the story is that we can change and we can choose the future that we want to have. And that all comes down to our choices.
Brooke, this book is a bit of an ode to St Kilda. And as you mentioned, it's a place that you have lived. It's a beachside suburb in Melbourne. So tell me a little bit more about your decision to Netta live there.
Well, writing a book has always been my biggest dream. And as I said, I used to live in St Kilda for a long time in my 20s. And I always used to say to myself, if I ever write a book, I want to set it here, because there's just so much material in St Kilda. There's so much texture. The architecture is amazing. The beach is beautiful. There's parks. There's Luna Park, the beautiful Palais Theatre. There's a lot of grit in St Kilda, but there's also a lot of wealth there. It's just a place of contrast and a lot of personality and a really particular kind of energy. So that's why I wanted to give her that as her home, and also because it's somewhere that she really wants to get back to. And so I feel like St Kilda, once you live there, it becomes a part of you. And if you move away, there is a yearning to go back. Even now, I mean, it's been, 20 years since I've lived in St Kilda. I still miss it. It's just something that stays with you. So writing that was very, very fun for me.
Very special indeed. I mean, I visited St Kilda. I live in Sydney, but I've visited St Kilda on a number of occasions. And yeah, I think there is something very special. There's a great vibe down there, and Sunday markets and people walking with their dogs and kids on the beach. And yeah, it's a really special place.
It's a cool place. Yeah.
Now, of course, when Netta lands in London, she gets to stay in Notting Hill, close to the Portobello Market. It's a place my husband and I had the chance to visit a few years ago. A delightful place. But of all places in London, why there?
I think it was just when I started writing this book, we were still in lockdown in Melbourne, and it was just somewhere that I really wanted to go. And so doing that research was a real escape for me. It also visually is wonderful to write because it's so colourful and vibrant. There's people everywhere. And I found a hotel, a real hotel called the Lost Poet on Portobello Road that I used as inspiration for the hotel that Netta stays in the book. And once I found out that the book was going to be published, I was very fortunate to be able to book a trip to London to go and fact check all of my research and go to all the places that Ned had been to in London, which was really crazy. It felt like walking onto the set of a show that you've watched, or to the set of a movie. It felt so surreal to be following her footsteps and quite emotional, actually. But one of the best things that happened when I was there was that I contacted the hotel and said that I had based the hotel on theirs. And they invited me to come in and check out the rooms because the 2 rooms that I had used in the book just happened to be vacant on that particular day. And I was able to go inside. So I was inside Netta's room and inside Audrey's room. And it was just, it was really, really great. But yeah, Notting Hill, I think it is just such an iconic setting. And I wanted something that would stand up to St Kilda's. For me, the setting of a book is every bit as important as the character and the plot. It just adds that extra layer of texture to the story. So I wanted an iconic London setting.
Brooke, you mentioned sort of going to London and doing a bit of research about where Netta might stay in London, but were there any other aspects of the book that required some research?
Yeah, absolutely there was. It was really, really important to me that I got the medical stuff right. So even though they were things that I've experienced myself, I checked them out with 2 different GPs and also a radiographer, just so that I had the language right and the process right, because I feel like fertility is an issue that's very sensitive for people. So I wanted to make sure that I was representing it accurately.
Yeah.
I also am friends with Jenna Lobianco, another amazing Australian author, and she is Italian. So she was very kind and she checked over the Italian restaurant scene for me. She helped me correct some language and also some details about the meatballs. So that was really great. And there's also a very short flashback scene where Mo as a child, is in a police station. So I had that scene checked by a member of the Victoria Police as well, just because I wanted to make sure that I was being historically accurate with that. So I did reach out to people, and it was a really great experience doing that because people are really keen to help. If you're writing something and it's within their area of expertise, they want you to get it right too. And so if, just to any writers listening, if you're writing something and you feel like you need to get some expert help, it really is A, important to do, but B, not that hard to do. And it's amazing how once you start mining your own network, how many people you can be connected to via your friends and contacts.
Brooke, I learned only this morning that you've created a special playlist on Spotify for readers to listen to. So what prompted this?
Well, I listened to a lot of music when I was writing the book. And obviously Mo's a musician, so it is a big part of the story. And there's lots of songs referenced and albums referenced in the book. So those songs are on the list. But also I wanted to find some songs with voices that I think might be similar to Mo's. So that was really fun. But yeah, when I was writing the book, it felt very cinematic to me as I was writing it. I could see it, I could hear it. And music is just a huge part of I hate the word vibe, but the vibe of this story is very musical.
Yeah.
So it was really fun to put that list together. And it's a mix of older songs and more contemporary songs. But yeah, I hope people like it. It was very fun to put together. I still listen to it. And, there was one song on there that I actually got a bit superstitious about when I was writing because it would just appear on the radio at these really poignant times throughout the process of me signing the deal and so on. And that's the Hosier song, Too Sweet. And it was probably just because it was being played to death on the radio at the time. It was probably not that coincidental or spooky, really. But it really sort of became a bit of an anthem for me as I was writing the book. And I think it always will be a really strong association with this book for me. It was an important song for me. So that's the #1 song on the playlist.
Fantastic. Well, downloading as soon as we finish talking today. That'll be wonderful. Now, you mentioned the fact that when you were writing this book, it was quite cinematic for you. You could see it, you could hear it. So if you had to think of 2 actors to play Netta and Mo in a screen adaptation of this story, fingers crossed, who would they be?
Okay, well, I have done some thinking about this. My problem is the linear nature of time, Claudine, because I have the perfect Mo, but he's too young at the moment. So if I could age Jacob Elordi up by 10 or 15 years, I think he would play a great Mo. He has that kind of he's very handsome in a kind of unconventional way. And he has this amazing ability to convey vulnerability while also being like crazy sexy. So I think if he was a bit older, he would be a great Mo. And I love the idea of someone like Teresa Palmer playing Netta because she's very relatable and natural, but she's funny and smart and just comes across as somebody who has this deep well of integrity beneath her work. But yeah, the nature of time is a bit of an issue with the Jacob.
I love Teresa Palmer. She has done some incredible work, and I think she would make a terrific Netta. Yes, I'm right on the money with that one.
I think she would be great. And I've always thought of Freya being Harriet Dyer from Colin from Accounts fame. I think she would be great. She's so funny.
You mentioned earlier some writers' tips, and you might know, Brooke, there are a lot of writers who listen to this podcast. And so to that end, what top tips would you offer to anyone listening today?
I think in terms of your writing process, that's going to look different for everybody. So you can look at tips and tricks from other writers, but it really is a matter of finding what works for you within your own, context. But I think something that is applicable to everyone is feedback. I can't stress enough how much feedback helped me shape this book. And truly, I do not think it would be getting published had I not had beta readers giving me feedback. I also paid for a manuscript assessment while I was preparing the book for publication, for a submission well before publication. And both of those things gave me great feedback to help me shape the story and strengthen the narrative. You don't have to pay for feedback, but I do believe you need it because you just cannot see the story the way a reader will see it. You need someone with fresh eyes to look at it and tell you where the gaps are and, where you need to lean in and where you need to pull back a little bit. So feedback is king.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. If there was one thing you'd like readers to take away from this story, what would that be?
Claudine, when I set out to write this book, I wanted to write something that people would look forward to reading at the end of the day, because I love those books where, you're having a hard day at work or a hard day with the kids or whatever it might be, but that little thought of, but I get to get into bed with my book at the end of the day and that's going to be great. I wanted to create something like that. So I think if people enjoy the book in that way, that it gives them some comfort or escape or, just a bit of a laugh, a feeling of connection, that will make me feel like I've done my job. But in terms of what they take away from it, I think everyone will take something different away depending on what they bring to the story, like any book. But I hope that the ultimate feeling is one of hopefulness and that, having a messy past doesn't mean you can't move forward into a beautiful future that you deserve and that you'll love.
So on that note, I'll wrap up by saying congratulations once again, Brooke. Better Than the Real Thing is sure to be a huge hit this summer. Thank you so very much for joining me on Talking Aussie Books today.
Thank you so much for having me, Claudine. This has been absolutely lovely.
That's it for this episode, folks. Hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. If so, I'd love it if you'd leave a review on your preferred listening platform, which may include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Until next time, friends, happy reading.